UIC.
Freedom the people of need.
Hell yeah.
Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah,
Yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Ready for broke every chain. That when you free up the people, levitate. Jamaica member, you ever great. I feel burn up the fire upon every snake. Me give thanks in every way. God still a look down once see we safe.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. This is Joseph Patterson, President of UIC Jamaica, and today our topic is going to be on the crime wave that has taken over our country. I'm sure all of you are very concerned about crime in Jamaica and would love to know what the real cause is. Well, what is the real cause of the ever-rising crime wave in Jamaica? Who or what should we blame? Is it the home? Is it the school? Is it the church? Is it the state? In this episode of UIC Liberty TV, I will explain the real cause of the excessive crime and violence you see in Jamaica's society today. We will not only explain the cause, but also provide the cure. And I'll show you why it will work if we decide as a people to embrace real change for a change. You know, a lot of people don't like change, but I think all of us here in Jamaica could do with some real change from this crime problem. It's been a monster, and it has only been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But what is the real cause? What is driving this crime? Who should we blame? Well, some people would say we should blame the home, the parents. Some might say blame the school. Some might say the church has failed us. And some might say the state has failed us. What do you think? Put your comment in the comment box to say what you think is the primary cause of crime. Whatever you think it is, write it down, just one word or a phrase, and let us know what you think the real cause is behind the crime wave in Jamaica. Today I'm going to have on the call with me a good friend of mine. We have met through our connection in the UIC, and he has come to be one of our strongest supporters and advocate, and also somebody who really cares about Jamaica and wants to see us figure out how to fix this crime problem. Like many others, he's in the diaspora and is watching and hoping that somehow the UIC can figure out and find a way to rescue Jamaica from the cruel monster of crime. Good night to all of you who are online. I see AV, I see JMH, I see Three's Chicken, I see Trudy and Mackenzie. Welcome and good night to all of you. Douglas Harper, Letty, I think it is. Really nice to see you all. And yeah, just put your comments in the box. I see some of you are quite knowledgeable on the subject based on the comments you're making already. And so we're going to get into that. But let me welcome to all of you now, Mr. Romans. Welcome, Keith Romans from Texas. How are you, sir?
How are you doing? Great, sir. Very excited. Very excited.
Yeah.
Very excited.
I see you're wearing a UIC shirt. I would have worn mine too, but I think it's in the laundry now.
Well, I'll make sure I get some more UIC shirts.
There you go.
So, but I work on that. Yeah.
No worries. But it's good to see you, and it's good to have you on again. I know the last time you were here, you made some wonderful contribution. Well, tonight we're going to reason. We're going to talk about crime, and let's kick it off. We're going to kick off this discussion tonight with a short video. I like using videos because it gives you another perspective or other perspective before you hear mine, and it can spark the conversation a bit. And it also is a nice way for people to kind of learn some things about the topic before we dig into it, at least from my perspective, and particularly that of the UIC, because tonight you're going to hear the UIC's analysis of the problem, and you're going to hear the UIC's solution of the problem. But let's begin with a lovely video, a short video done by a young man that will give us a really nice synopsis of the crime problem in Jamaica, and then we'll go into some discussions after that. So again, welcome everyone. Jaden, I see you. Lion rule the world, or the jungle, I see you as well. So let's dig into this now. All right, off we go. Hope you can all see that. Let's listen in.
The first cause of crime and violence we're going to look at is poverty and unemployment. In my opinion, the primary reason for crime is the immense poverty in certain, or should I say, abandoned areas of the country. The truth is that there are still many Jamaicans living well below the poverty line, which means that some are not able to provide for themselves and therefore will seek other methods of surviving. The juxtaposition of a life of poverty with the life of the rich or middle class frequently portrayed on the television and in day-to-day life will inevitably cause those who feel sidelined tempted to take from those who deemed have. Remember the have versus the have-not speech by Mr. Siaga. Poverty and unemployment also allow for young boys, from what I've observed, to be recruited into gangs in order to get money to provide for their families. Some will become trapped in the life of violence as the only means to put food on the table. Next, the justice system. Another problem in Jamaica that facilitates crime is the justice system. Each year, many cases are thrown out for lack of evidence or have been prolonged for years after the date of the crime till it affects the chance of a sound hearing. We simply do not have enough judges and courts to try all these cases that are being filed in a timely manner. There is also a perception that law enforcement has an element of corruption in it, which causes distrust between residents and the police forces. Corruption also causes many key witnesses to be scared to testify for fear of their livelihood and indeed lives afterwards. I believe that this environment causes criminals to conclude that even if they do get caught, the chances of them getting locked away is low, as the case may not be solved for years. Next, the not me mentality. Translation, the informer should die mentality. Unrelaxed vibe in Jamaica unfortunately extends into a treatment of crime as well. The dominant attitude is not a personal issue, unless the crime is impacted a loved one.
So right now, if we live in this community, it's very risky.
Right now?
Right the 2 year, without a done one in the place, very risky.
One of the other causes of crime and violence is donmanship. Crime also stems from the unfortunate presence of dons or leaders in depressed communities who are heavily affiliated with gun or scamming crimes. These dons or gang leaders usually take care of the community in that they may provide money to families for buying school books, help to pay rent, or even send a child to university. The don then becomes the center of economic and social livelihood in the community, who is a revered leader that residents can depend on. This would be directly contrasted with the government or the system, which seemingly doesn't provide in the same way from the perspective of the community members. Unfortunately, many of these dons facilitate crimes to maintain manship. Next, one of the root causes of crime and violence also is drug use. Outside of drug trafficking in general and its inherent impact, it is worth noting that a considerable number of Jamaicans, men in particular, use weed, and excessively too, daily. One direct issue with that is that it impairs the regular functioning of the brain, and according to medical practitioners, may cause violent, irrational outbursts. Before I go, it should be worth noting that as with any other country, there are many causes for crime in Jamaica, and many are interconnected or related. It should be encouraging though to note that the majority of crimes are concentrated in the so-called inner city, depressed or garrison areas of the island, usually where lottery scamming is prevalent. For the most part, the rest of Jamaica is relatively safe. In fact, many of the more rural communities, such as Treasure Beach in St. Elizabeth, experience little to no crime over a sustained period of times. By the way, did you hear Accompong, the Maroon village in Jamaica, did not record a murder for over 250 years? Crime in Jamaica is often sensationalized in the mass media as crimes similar in nature happen across the globe. That is not to say that we do not have serious issues, but simply to say that we shouldn't overlook the good that the amazing people of this wonderful country have done and continue to do. Just ask any visitor to the island, what makes Jamaica special and why do they continue to return? In most cases, they'll tell you, it's our people. I hope this answered some of your...
All right. So now let's see what we have learned from that video. Mr. Romans, you would have heard some things and have some thoughts while you were watching. What were some of your thoughts?
Well, one of the things that hit me overwhelmingly is a question that was posted today and on our general discussion, and they were asking what are the causes of crime in Jamaica. It was just so overwhelming that it is really the governance or the way the country is governed. I tend to differ with a small portion of that video because unless that video was made for a while, most of the people in the diaspora that I interface with, they have great concern about coming home because they've heard so many things about, people who have come there and have met their demise. And of course we understand, and because of the economic condition, what happens is that people tend to be a little, it actually make crime a little bit more prominent. Much more prominent rather, in fact. But definitely the concern with most of the people in the diaspora now are their safety. And you'll find a lot of people going to all-inclusive, which is something that the UIC will be working on trying to change, because they figure that they have some level of security there. But the point is that the overwhelming answer is the way the country is governed, and how the political system tend to adapt to some of the practices in the culture that tend to work for them. For example, you'll have the garrisons and you'll have the Donmanship, as he mentioned there, and many of the political leaders tend to align with these people, even though many of them are criminals. But say, instead of governing, they adopt because they want to legs up. And I just wonder.
In other words, if I were to follow your logic, right. It's as though the dons come before the politician, or is it the other way around? The politicians came first, create the dons, and then the dons end up controlling the politicians. Is that the way you see it?
That's exactly the way that
exactly.
It is.
So in this chicken and egg, the chicken was the politicians, the eggs were the don, but now the dons are the chicken.
Exactly.
Now,
then it all has to do with governance, because
absolutely, it started with the politicians. It's because you're probably older than I am, and so you probably would have seen a time in Jamaica's history where our people were better than now. As bad as things were, we were better than now. In fact, the crime rate in Jamaica has just continuously grown upwards. So there's a time when it was much less than today, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse until today. Now, before I go in, I want to just kind of recap 8 things which I heard coming out of the video that we just watched. And that video, by the way, was made in 2019. So the first thing that he pointed out was that poverty,
A long time ago.
yeah, exactly, is that poverty and the lack of employment opportunities was a key driver in his mind. So he saw poverty and a lack of employment opportunities. I'm going to show you later on in this presentation that poverty is not as significant a driver as it appears to be. I'm going to show you that later on. But in his argument, which were plausible and quite strong, and poverty is a contributing factor. He says poverty and lack of employment opportunities, which are definitely key contributing factors. He also pointed out the blatant differences between the haves and the have-nots. So if you drive around Jamaica and move around, you'll notice that there are lots of contrast. You'll see some people living in very horrible conditions, not too far removed from slavery, and even worse. I have seen persons living in conditions that could only be described as what you would see in the days of slavery, and that still exists today. Those same persons see homes and see cars and see persons who are living a much better lifestyle than they are, with things that are much better than they have. And so obviously this creates some disturbances in the mind. Why am I living in such squalor and with such dire needs? And look at that person. So for example, if you were to compare the average 50-year-old male today, the average 50-year-old male today living in Jamaica who has never left Jamaica. They've lived here all their lives, depended entirely on surviving within this system. They didn't get any help from outside. Very, very few of those 50-year-old males would have anything close to the assets of the Prime Minister of Jamaica. So the Prime Minister of Jamaica, who just turned 50, he just turned 50, July gone, just turned 50. I just turned 51 in August gone, and he just turned 50. And the assets that he has and how wealthy he is, the kind of home that he has, his station in life, any other 50-year-old young man would ask the question, how him achieve that, man? Would I love to know, how him achieve all of that? And then when he starts to examine the Prime Minister's life, he would say, okay, what him did do? What him do? And he would say, okay, the Prime Minister went to high school. He was head boy at St. Catherine High School. He graduated and went to UIC, and then he left UIC. And what did he do after UIC? Well, he went and worked for a charity. Oh, that's interesting. Then a year or so after, he's working for Edward Siaga as his assistant. And then about 2 years after, he's a member of parliament. And 25 years later, he is prime minister. And all his life has been spent in politics. And voila, whoa, look what him have. No, the only other persons that he see that have a similar thing, in most cases, they are scammers or involved in some. In most cases, they don't see a lot of other 50-year-old male like themselves who have been able to navigate Jamaica's system and do so well. Now, if they had a friend who migrated to the US or migrated to Canada or migrated to England, that friend that they know could conceivably have maybe some near level to the Prime Minister. Maybe not the same level, but somewhere near, and they're like, okay, so I foreign him go and him get, and was able to make it a foreign. He said, what you do? And he said, oh, well, I got a job with an investment firm. I moved up the ladder and I became CEO. And because of that, I was able to buy a big house in Jamaica, come back and buy a car, whatever. Okay, we can understand that. But what happened to we here, so? What happened to we, the ordinary 50-year-old male? Why we couldn't achieve all of that? They say, okay, maybe the Prime Minister inherited it. Maybe there was some family member that was very wealthy and passed it, and you go check it out. No, there's none. Okay, maybe he did some big business, and you can go and say, okay, where's the business? Is it a Microsoft or an Apple No, you can't find anything. So how do you do that? And you go back, let me check some other prime ministers. Okay, you check the other prime ministers. Okay, they came in relatively so, and by the time they leave office, they're much richer. How do they do that? So that is to me a significant mental problem which will affect the way people behave. But moving along, the gentleman in the film also said that because of the poverty and the lack of employment opportunities and the blatant differences between the haves and the have-nots, and seeing it in real life and seeing it on television, some of them find it easy to be recruited by gangs, right? So they're struggling with life, and they find it easy now when the gang come and say, "Hey man, join me, and we can give you, we can make it faster." Or a scamming committee, a scamming team, come and join, we can make it faster. You know, I was working with a young man about, I won't say when, a young man. And one of the things he said to me was, it's so hard for him because many of the boys that he know in his community, he was working with me, you know, many of the boys he know in his community, they are involved in scamming. Now, when he works for me and he gets his little salary, that is nothing compared to when friend them again, and then friend them now get up and go to the 9 to 5 job, and you know they're not, you know, they're living good. They can buy car, they're building their homes, they build up their parents' home, they buy furniture, they buy big TV, they buy a big sofa, and it's like why? And you know, me and him would lie, and we'd chat sometime, and we just talk about life and whatever, and he would just explain to me how difficult it is, and he's bright and a bright young man, but how difficult it is to find a way to get to a level that is similar to what he's seeing other people having, you know, and they're not demonstrating any outstanding skills. It's not like they have developed a software, invented a product, or build a successful business from the ground up. They're getting this access to money through means that are not considered honest and clean and decent. So he worried about that. The video also talked about the justice system. It talked about cases being thrown out for lack of evidence. It takes too long to get through the court system. Corruption in the system caused the people to distrust the police, to distrust the justice system. Persons are fearful for their lives. They don't want to be witnesses, you know, in crimes and to report things to the police because they don't know who to trust. They're afraid of the Don and the criminals, and they're afraid of the police, and they don't trust the justice system. And those who engage in criminal activities feel like there's little chance of them ever being caught. And if they're caught, they might get out very quickly because the system doesn't work very well. So to me, that is a major problem. If people don't trust the system, don't trust the police, and can't rely on the system to help them, so they're prone then to join in the criminality because, you know, being on the right side of the law puts you at a disadvantage. And if you're on the wrong side, you might have greater advantages. He also talked about the inform of a dead mentality, which of course is grown in the especially the inner city communities and wider too. You know, you don't tell upon other people. You don't tell to somebody else. And I've seen that in my work here in Jamaica in different groups. We don't like to confront each other. We don't like to confront the problem. Unless you finally get burned yourself, you know. So if we see something, we're going to just let it pass. We're not going to say anything. Worse if it's a crime, because we cannot. 1 second, because we cannot trust the system. And then he talks about the donmanship. You know, we're going to talk about that later some more. The gang leaders that provide money and, you know, send kids to school, buy school book, give lunch money, give bus fare. So the don man kind of become the surrogate father for some of the children in the community, and even a defender. Sometimes the gangs defend you from other gangs in other areas. And the people now in some communities come to depend on the gang more than they would on the police because they can't trust the police. Yeah. The gang is also sometimes protected by politicians, and that's a historical fact. And it has kind of evolved somewhat, but that is there. And then he talks about drug use, destroying the ability to think and to reason. even to hold down a job. It impairs the brain. It might cause one to be violent. So those are things we can look at. And then he talks about the fact that most of this was concentrated in the inner city mostly, and not so much in rural areas like here in St. Elizabeth where I live. Well, all of that is now changing. The crime problem is spreading like wildfire. And I'll tell you why, Mr. Roman, before I bring you in to comment on this. What the Prime Minister did when he brought in the states of emergencies and ZOZOs, he actually expanded the crime problem. Because when he went now and locked down an area, those criminals, by the way, they're tipped off. As soon as they're coming, their connections in the police at the highest level and their connection in the parliament at the highest level, just call them and say, yo, I have a plan for your area tomorrow, so move out. And so they move out from, let's say, Kingston, and they move to Spanish Town, and they move out of Spanish Town, and they move to, say, Santa Cruz, or to Little Ochi, or to Junction, or they move to Mandeville, or they move to Maypen. And so what the Prime Minister has been doing is moving around the criminals so that they become more aware now, more flexible. They have now learned how to dodge the system, and so they have broadened their criminal network. And so all we're doing is shifting the problem around the country and causing it to be more widespread rather than so the people. Some people are saying they're very happy for the states of emergencies in those communities where when they bring the police in, yes, for a few weeks or a few days, there's no shooting and the crime goes down for that little period because all the criminals have left. Now, while this area is now quiet, the other area gets hot. So the people over there don't say, we want the zone of special operations too. Okay, move them over to here. And so now this zone get quiet and ears get hot again. So look at it. They go to Montego Bay, it calmed down. They leave Montego Bay, it hot again. So the solution that the Prime Minister has clearly isn't working, but he's trying to work on the brains of the people and get them to buy into this idea that crime fighting is about zones of special operations and so on. What are your thoughts, Mr. Romans?
My thoughts on that is I like data. I like data. From the data that I'm learning, it doesn't seem like it affects those zones have actually curtailed the crime at all. It seems like, as you said there, you still have a vast amount of people being killed, because that's one of the big statistics that they look at every year. And then you also have crimes being diverted to other places. So, have they thought about, re-examining the result of that rather than coming up, because they continue the same old playbooks, political playbooks, where they come and try to tell people, this is what happened, and this is what the crime has been reduced in this area by this percentage or whatever, to console people, when in fact they know that they're really misleading people. And that's just totally wrong. And I must take this opportunity when I looked at the UIC plans to divorce the different ministries totally from politics, and find people who are responsible and who can
qualified and competent
and can be held accountable to run these ministries, and they can have their team to do it. I think that's a very genius idea, and I would like the Jamaicans who are listening and other people, because I've invited many people to watch, to look back at the plans of the UIC. The plans of the UIC is to make sure that at the ministry level, you launch search nationwide and otherwise in the diaspora.
International. So once you're a Jamaican, anywhere there in the world, if you are qualified and competent, you will not be excluded from being a solution factor as a minister of government in Jamaica. But I don't want to get into much solution yet. Solution come later. Right now, I want to talk about the problem. So watch me now. I am now going to show you all another video. Now, this one is a very different video, very, very different. We're going to jump from Jamaica and fly all the way to Singapore. And now we're going to watch a video about crime and violence in Singapore. And this is going to blow your mind. And then we're going to settle down and we're going to look at Jamaica's solution by the UIC. So watch me carefully. Follow me on this one. Fasten your seatbelt because this one is literally going to cause you to fly out of your seat when you realize what they have achieved and what we can and must achieve as well.
Will achieve. Yes.
So we will achieve it. The UIC is going to do it. We know that the current guys can't do it. And the reason why they can't do it is that they are not prepared to do what needs to be done. And so we're going to have to come in and we are going to have to do it. So watch this one now and pay close attention. Don't miss a single word. Listen to everything. And then we're going to talk about it in a little bit. So here we go.
Singapore has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. So I'm at this hawker center and I'm going to leave my laptop, my cell phone, and heck, even my wallet to save my seat as I go order lunch. Could I get a chicken wrap? It's about 9 a.m. and we're on the ground floor of this building which has offices and condos. Even though a lot of the shops down here are still closed, well, you can still get a pretty close look of everything they're selling. Although some stores have chosen to put in tighter security measures.
Singapore is ranked number 2 in the Economist Intelligence Unit's Safe City Index. It comes in right behind Tokyo. The population of the city-state is more than 5.5 million people. In 2016, crime in Singapore reached a 30-year low, according to Singapore police. And in that same year, there were a whopping 135 days that went by completely crime-free, from crimes including snatch theft, housebreaking, and robbery. It's no wonder some businesses barely even shut at night.
Hello? Excuse me? Maybe it's self-serve. I think this is closed. I think this means that they're closed. Yep, this one's closed. This Starbucks is located in one of Singapore's underground train stations, and as you can see by the white rope, well, it's now closed. No gate, no locks, not even a door. It's just after 8:30 p.m. at one of the busiest train stations in Singapore, and as you can see, some of the shops that sell items all day long have officially closed up shop and indicated so by putting this cover over their products. But, of course, you're being watched.
One reason crime is so low here is, well, it's nearly impossible to get away with, and punishment is strict. Tens of thousands of cameras are actively monitoring areas around Singapore, and the cameras come in handy. On January 2nd, 2018, a man snatched a woman's cell phone and ran away. 3 days later, he was arrested and will face between 1 and 7 years in prison.
Well, it's all still here. Don't try this at home.
All right, so there you have it. Don't try this at home. And of course, in our case, you don't want to try leaving your belongings exposed as he did. As you watched that, Mr. Rowlands, what were some of the thoughts going through your mind?
The first thing that came to my mind is that I've talked to people about Singapore, and I know it can happen. It can happen in Jamaica. Singapore has a population of 5.5 million people in one city. 5.5 million based on the statistic there at that time. And Jamaica has a total population of 2.8 million, almost a half. And we have all the resources that we need. We definitely can do it. We just have to find the right people in the place to put in charge. You know, I was telling someone today that if I was to be appointed head of the police, I would invite all of the inspectors, You know those guys that wear the khaki clothes and wear the hats? I would invite them all in a room, including the chief. And I would say, anybody who decide to continue with corruption and who do not want to cooperate with no corruption, get up right now and take your hat and walk out. That's what I would tell them. Because anybody who agree to live a free a life that is free of corruption. And of course, just start there. And that's what we did back there in military. People, if you decide to continue, then you can go. But if you decide to change, and as of that day, and they know that there are consequences moving forward, you do it that way. I mean,
So,
that's the way.
but can you imagine? Can you imagine 135 days crime-free? They had 130. I mean, every day in Jamaica, somebody get murdered. Every day. I mean, it's unbelievable. We have 365 days in a year, and by the time we finish, we murdered 1,500 people minimum.
Wow.
And they went 100. In fact, Singapore's crime rate is 0.2 per 50,000 person, per 100,000 person. Jamaica's crime rate is 57 per 100,000 persons. In other words, when we have 1,500 murders for a year, the maximum they would have is 22, if any.
Wow.
Okay? And they have 5 million people, 5.5 million. We have 2.9. In their country, they can leave their stores, just put a little string across the door, a little rope to say we're closed, a little tape, a little yellow ribbon, or just cover the things with a sheet or a cloth and say, we're kind of done for today, and leave all of their wares exposed, knowing that nobody is going to steal anything, generally speaking. And if they want added security, they might just put a border, a little physical border, which you can easily pull away and go around if you want. While we in Jamaica, we're living behind burglar bars. A major cost, if you're building a house here in Jamaica, one of your major costs will be grilling your house. Wow. Buying steel that we don't produce to grill your house, to bar yourself in from criminals. If you're coming home at night, you have to be fearful about stepping out of your car to open the gate. You have to worry about what time you're coming in. Many stores have to close up by 6 o'clock in many communities. They can't stay open because they can't afford to buy the level of security they would need to be able to stay open. Yep. In Singapore, you can leave your valuables exposed, and chances are there's a 99% chance your valuables will not be stolen. Now, they have cameras everywhere, but one of the reasons they have cameras everywhere and the people are okay with it is because they trust their government. Here in Jamaica, even if we had cameras everywhere, that won't be enough because you would have had to be able to trust your government. For example, let's say there are cameras everywhere in Jamaica, but you commit a crime. Chances are that camera footage is going to be disappeared. It's going to be gone. You understand? Wow. If you're connected with the right person, if you're the criminal in question, the evidence will disappear from your case. Now, if another person if they want to trap another person, then they will use that camera evidence now, not for the crime, not for criminality, but maybe to use the information against you. You understand? For political purposes. So it's not it's not just simply putting up cameras, because some of us might leave here and say, oh, let's just put up cameras. It's not just the cameras, it's a full package. Yeah. And realize that in Singapore, they take crime so seriously that everybody participates in solving the crime problem. Every citizen is engaged. So you cannot get away with crime in Singapore very easily. And that's because they have a culture of anti-crime, a culture of anti-corruption, a culture of the people behaving and thinking a certain way. And that culture wasn't always there. That culture was built into them. That culture started with Lee Kuan Yew in 1965, having the kind of leadership and foresight that every country needs. And he was able to change the culture of Singapore move them from a backwater, backward, impoverished country to a highly disciplined, intelligent, hardworking, and honest citizens, and made that culture that way. Now, our leaders have also done the same in Jamaica, but the reverse. They have built a culture. It's a culture of corruption. They have built a culture. It's a culture of crime. They have created a culture. It's a culture of scamming. And now we need new leadership, fresh leadership to say, let's now change the culture of Jamaica, but we cannot do that with people who it's now in their DNA. What you see now, it's in their DNA. So even if they announce a new project, we're not going to do cameras, it's in their DNA to be corrupt. They will use the cameras corruptly. We're now going to do this. It will be in their DNA to be corrupt, so they're still going to have it. So let me show you one more video. And this one now is going to show you 7 reasons, 7 exact things that Singapore did that made them as successful as they are. We're going to borrow some of this 7, and I'm going to share with you afterwards some more that we're going to do to make sure that we're not just as good as Singapore, but even better. So let's watch this one now and learn from it. Here we go. 7 reasons.
Seven reasons why Singapore's crime rate is so low. Talk about Singapore and their crime rate will almost always be mentioned. Unlike other countries, including those nearby, the crime rate in Singapore is so low that the country is considered one of the safest in the world. In fact, it is so safe that if people leave their stuff in the middle of a busy shop or restaurant, they will likely still find it exactly where they left it. People are so complacent about their safety, it is not an issue for both locals and foreigners alike to walk down an empty street during odd hours at night. Being mugged or harmed is the least of their worries. Of course, no country has a 0 crime rate, and Singapore is no exception. However, what is undeniable is that it is extremely low. We will explore some of the reasons why this may be. Number 1. Full enforcement of their laws deters people from committing crimes. Locals and foreigners alike tread carefully in Singapore and avoid committing crimes, as they know they will be easily discovered once they do so. Unlike in other countries where you can get away from petty crimes by being apologetic or slipping some bills on the greasy hands of officers, doing so is no dice in Singapore. No one is definitely above the law here. Number 2. Self-discipline is key. Singaporeans are definitely more aware of their actions, and they make sure that what they do is legal. They know that doing the wrong things, even what they consider small things, will likely result in being fined, ending up in jail, or worse. Since young, discipline has been heavily ingrained in them, so it comes naturally for Singaporeans to be law-abiding citizens. Corporal punishment is even seen as an acceptable way to instill discipline. That's why caning is so commonplace, and even children are caned because they know them why being disciplined is very important. Discipline is vital and as natural as breathing for them. Number 3. Visibility of cameras and law enforcement officers makes people more conscious of their actions. Like any other country, CCTV cameras are installed all over Singapore. However, these cameras are only aimed for law enforcement. That's why in most countries, solving crimes takes time because law enforcement is minimal. Singapore is different. The abundance of CCTV cameras in nearly every corner, plus the full enforcement of the laws and reliable enforcement officers, makes it easy for criminals to be caught in the fastest possible time. The people know that there is nowhere for them to hide should they choose to commit a crime, so they follow the laws. They know that someone is always watching them closely. Number 4. Harsh penalties and prison sentences play a big factor. The consequences of committing crimes and strictness of their laws has made Singapore infamous worldwide. Where else can you find a country where bringing chewing gum will merit a fine of around $1,000, even as a first-time offender? Littering will cost the offender hundreds of dollars, jaywalking can land a person a prison sentence, and vandalism a severe case. Worse crimes, like bringing in and consuming drugs, even before arriving in the country, can result in a death sentence. Number 5. Citizens take it upon themselves to report crimes and track down criminals. Most people tend to turn a blind eye when crime is happening out of fear that the criminal will get back at them. Not so in Singapore. Singaporeans take it upon themselves to report crimes or sightings of wanted criminals because they know that the officers will immediately respond to their feedback. Neighborhood watches are prevalent all over the country. They don't fear retaliation from these criminals because they have full faith in their country's robust legal system. Number 6. Most people are well paid. It has been proven that poverty is the major reason why people find themselves in conflict with the law. Since businesses in Singapore pay their employees well, this deters them from committing crimes. They have no need to resort to doing illegal because their earnings are more than enough to get by. There's hardly any reason for them, money-wise, to commit crimes. Number 7. The people are educated from a young age to follow and respect the law. As mentioned, discipline plays a large part in a Singaporean's life, even when young. It is common for children to be taught about the law, basic etiquette, and consequences of committing crimes. It is also widespread corporal punishment at home and even in schools to know that there is a consequence if they should do something bad. Learning these things will ensure they carry these lessons all of their lives. To sum up, the crime rate in Singapore is low because of the combination of these factors: effective and strict enforcement of laws and cooperation of the people. Looking at it, any country can be willing to cooperate while committing crimes. It cannot be denied that it is effective. This is why even foreigners who are traveling for a short visit are also willing to cooperate. They know that in Singapore, every wrong move will be dealt with swiftly and accordingly.
All right. Now that was interesting. And I'm sure, you would have seen some things in that video that caused you to say, whoa,
Yes.
death penalty for drugs, chewing gum. What are your thoughts, Mr. Romans?
My thoughts.
And by the way,
my thoughts.
we're not advocating everything
We're not.
Singapore does.
We would not. We would not.
But it's important for us to show what they've done.
Yes. One of the things that they hit on there, two very good points that I remember, is ingraining that in them very early from their youth to be responsible, and the culture of what the absolute opposite of what is perpetuated back home back there in Jamaica, where people turn a blind eye. In Singapore, everybody is aware of the crime. The crime affect me as it affect my family, if it affect everybody. So if you commit it, I'm gonna bust on you, and I'm gonna make sure that the law enforcement get you to deal with it. You know what I mean? So the kids learn that from early, so they know that that's a part of the culture. The other thing that hit me straight is which leads also back to the governance, is making sure that people are paid well. You know what I mean? They are paid well so that they have no excuse. You know what I mean? They have no excuse. Quite naturally, we could start with the essential services, the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the police, the nurses. All those essential people have to be paid well, and then you make sure that everybody live a safe life. But start with education, man. I mean, education. Those are two of the things that I was telling them today, that I would advocate for the UIC government to start with: education, and cleanliness,
Yes.
Because once you clean up the street. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, man. So you're hitting something. You love to go to solution, which I understand.
I
Because
understand.
The UIC is all about solutions, but
Yes.
we do take the time to educate and inform. So what we have done so far, we have looked at what's going on in Jamaica, and we have looked at one Jamaican's perspective on it, and we saw a good video. And we have looked at the outcome in Singapore. Now, somebody in the comment section says Singapore sounds like one big prison. Let me see if I can find a person. Singapore sounds like a big prison. That's what the person. Now, hold on. So let's talk a moment here. A big prison. So here's the prison of Singapore. When you go to bed at night, you don't have to worry. You can leave your windows and doors open and go to bed. When you start a business in Singapore, you don't have to worry to buy a lot of security. You can leave your business, normally open and available, and not have to do a whole heap of lockup when you're trying to leave. And that, my friend would consider that prison. Now, me tell the truth, I would prefer to live in that prison than the prison I'm in right now. Right now, I'm in my home, and the burglar bar them lock up. You understand? If a fire come right now, it may have to go try to figure out quickly how to find the key, how to get the lock open and whatever. In Singapore, if a fire come, I easily open in the door and walk out free. So if that's you, boy, I don't know. I would love that prison. In Singapore, if you're not going to be somebody who's going to litter the street, you don't have to worry. If you're not somebody who's going to thief something from somebody, you don't have to worry. So I like that prison. So when I watch this thing, when I watched the 7 reasons, I took away some key things from it. Number 1, full enforcement of the law deters criminal. Full enforcement. Now, we know in Jamaica, we don't have full enforcement. What we have is selective enforcement. So, for example, when I marched on September 22nd, 2021, for the rights and freedoms of Jamaica, the law came out in its full force. An army of police officers came out because we were going to walk for our freedom. We were going to do a peaceful walk. So the law came out, and the law said that nobody's allowed to walk, but they only lock up me and 3 children. You understand? So in Singapore, they would lock up everybody. All 500 of us would be locked up if that was the law, if that was a good law. So in Singapore, they have good laws in many instances, and they fully enforce those laws, and no one is above the law, not even the prime minister. No bribes are allowed and no bribes are taken, because they have built a system of governance that makes the people not want to engage in bribes, while our system is based on one where bribes and some people are above the law and so on. So for example, during the so-called pandemic, ministers of government broke the law, broke the rules that were enforced by their own government, and they got a little slap on the wrist, go one side for a little bit, and then get promoted to another position. You understand? Not in Singapore. Now, I also noticed from watching the video that self-discipline is ingrained from childhood. Now, I noticed they use corporal punishment, which many of us are used to. We grew up on that and so on. But I believe we don't have to use corporal punishment. I believe what we have to do is invest our intellect and energy in finding methods of discipline that does not include violence for children. Adults, of course, when you get to adult level, the discipline level has to be different. You know, adults are adults. But for children, I believe you can find non-corporal punishment means of disciplining children, and we should invest in that. Now, our government in Jamaica took away corporal punishment, but did not provide teachers with the training and tools they need to apply alternative methods, and that has cost us dearly in the school system. But I'll come back to that later. I also noticed that visibility and reliability of police officers is a big thing for them. So their police officers do not sit in police stations and waiting to get a call for something to happen. Their police officers are very mobile. They have a lot of mobile units on bikes, and their police officers are busy looking for crimes, looking for people committing crimes. So they're very visible and in all parts. So they're not sitting down in offices or sitting down in barracks. They're literally on the streets out there, but they're friendly, they're courteous, but they're ready to fully enforce the law immediately. When I went to Cuba, I noticed the same thing. When I went to China, and I'm not advocating for these countries. What I'm saying is, what I noticed is when I was in Beijing, the police was very, very visible. So you felt safe walking around because everywhere you turn, there's the police. Now, but they didn't look like the Jamaican police. They didn't have big handguns and looking. They looked respectable. They were courteous. They were firm, and they stood with respect, and they were honorable in their disposition. And I saw that in Beijing, and I saw that in Havana when I was in Cuba. And the same thing obtains in Singapore. They're very visible, always riding around, looking for problems before they occur and preventing them from happening. I was by the pier in Havana one night with some friends, and we're just there talking on the side of the street. And then there's a little thing that says, "Don't go in this area." A small sign was there. But I wanted to take a picture beside the monument that was there. And so I stepped over the small barrier to take the picture. And then before I could take one more step, in no time, a police officer appeared. He was not rude. He was like, "Hey boy, come here." No, he simply gestured to me and just said, "Uh-uh." And I behaved as I didn't understand. I behaved as though I wasn't aware of what he's trying to tell me, and just to see his reaction. And then he came up closer to me and he pointed to the sign and say, "Please step back over." And I stepped back over, and it was done. But his presence, his mannerism, he was very respectful, but I could feel in the atmosphere that you need to obey the laws. Even a simple law as not stepping over a barrier, because that's a protected area. I also saw in the video that there was harsh penalties and prison sentence for breaking the law. They were very strict. Even littering and vandalism was just not allowed. While in Jamaica, everywhere we litter. And I'm not blaming the people purely. I'm saying in their system, the law and the law enforcers operate in a way so that the people now understand that littering is wrong, vandalism is wrong, and there'll be strict punishment if you violate it. The citizens are also motivated and empowered to report crimes and criminals because they could trust their police, they could trust their government, and so they have no fear of criminals. They don't have to be afraid of retaliation because they know that if they tell the truth about a crime or a criminal, they're protected by their government and protected by their police. The opposite obtains in Jamaica. If you tell the truth to the police, you might be telling it to a police who's going to go back and tell it to the criminal who's going to come and kill you. And there are many cases in Jamaica where witnesses just disappear or die trying to give information, right? I also noticed that most people in Singapore are well paid. Now, we can't just, it's not like they just give people money freely. So they're well paid because they're highly skilled. Back to your education point. They're highly skilled, they're highly productive, and so they're highly paid. So it's not free money. It's not just paying nurses more money or paying teachers more money or paying police officers more money or paying employees more money. The employees, the teachers, the nurses, the producers, the production persons, the salespersons, all of the different persons are highly productive, highly skilled, and so they're worth the higher pay, and the country is not losing by paying them higher because they're giving higher value. I saw recently, just today, the government announcing that they're going to put customer service units in all of the government ministries. I'm like, what are you talking about? Customer service should be a part of the normal way of life of every staff. It should be a part of their existing training, their existing operation. So all they're going to do now is to create new jobs and increase the wage bill of government, which is already very high, and put more tax burden on us to have some fake, useless, ineffective new program called customer service. And we will still not have customer service going on because it's not a department that you need. It's an entire change of culture and change of behavior. You understand? So last thing before I let you jump back in. So there are people are not only highly skilled, highly productive, and thus highly paid and motivated to work against crime. The people are educated from childhood about the laws. Do the Jamaican child learn about the system of governance, the laws that we have, why they should obey them, how it works? No. They're taught just to go pass some basic CXC exams to go get a job at the end. They're not taught civics. They're not taught civility. They're not taught to be a part of a structure and system where it's important to be highly disciplined, be highly skilled, be highly productive, and learn to trade value for value as opposed to expecting something for nothing. They also have a clean and green program in Singapore where the Prime Minister from day one made it clear that all of Singapore must be a clean and green, meaning pretty garden, a very nice garden. The entire country must be a garden, just like what the UIC is going to do with Jamaica. So again, we don't have to beat our children, but we must discipline them. We don't need to have the death penalty either. I don't believe in the death penalty personally because you never know, especially in a corrupt society like this. You want to make sure that you can correct your mistake. When you kill somebody, you can't reverse that. You can reverse a long sentence. You can reverse a caning, but you can't reverse the death penalty. So I don't trust that. However, the point they're trying to make is they take these matters seriously. What are your thoughts on that before we move to Romans?
I was reading an article the other day. In fact, I was listening to a video of someone from one of the colonial system, and they were comparing Singapore and Jamaica, and the total conclusion at the end of it was that the reason why black people are not able to live a certain level of certain life standard and to be economically, independent is because of their IQ. So I took a real to that, and I'm saying to the Jamaicans who are now watching and who are now listening, that if you believe that, you stay there. But if you don't believe, you know that you can embrace the UIC and know that our plan is to educate people from baby stage and teach them how to live right, teach them how to be orderly, to be honest, how to be able to resolve conflict, how to live a life that can be compared with any Singapore or any Canada or any America, because we can do it there. But if you believe what that colonial people said, that you have a low IQ, then you can live there. You can live there with your low IQ because you are convinced that they are right. We know that they are not right. We know that Jamaican people are smart. And if you think I'm lying, you look in the diaspora. Look at what Jamaicans have done in the diaspora. When they leave Jamaica and they come here, they remove mountains. In fact, I have something to tell all of Jamaica. When I first traveled to New York in 1980, in the 1980s, the first thing my pastor told me, who was an American, he said, "Did you know that Jamaicans are known to be the Black Jews?" I said, "Wow." He said, "Jamaicans are known to be the Black Jews. They can make blood out of stone, and they come there poor, and they get to be rich people." It was not until later on when we started having the influx of the criminals that were shipped here by the government, that they start having doubt about Jamaicans. Because Jamaicans who've been here for many years have lived honorable lives, and they have come with their talents, and they have come and made blood out of stone. What people need to understand is that we are making the colonial in their countries richer, while our country are getting poorer. We are the second poorest country in the Caribbean as we speak right now. Continuing on that trajectory, we're going to be number one sooner or later. So people need to wake up and embrace the philosophy of the UIC. That's like
I'm going to show you now. You made some very important point. I'm going to show you now something powerful. I'm going to compare now Jamaica, not with Singapore merely. I'm going to compare Jamaica with Haiti and with Ghana. All right, so we're going to learn some lessons here tonight. Now we're going to look at some serious comparison between Singapore as well. So 4 countries: Singapore, Ghana, Haiti, and Jamaica. And what we're going to try to do, we're going to look for similarities and differences. What are the deviations? And we're going to challenge now ourselves on some cherished beliefs. I'm going to show you in this comparison that poverty is not the problem, even though it plays a role. I'm going to show you now what the real problem is, because that is the purpose of tonight's show, for us to see the real primary cause of crime. There are all kinds of issues, there are all kinds of variables and so on, but there's one primary problem, and this comparison is going to bring it out. So first, I'm going to compare Jamaica on a slide with Singapore on some key index, and I'm going to move now to Ghana and Haiti, and look what we're going to learn from this. Watch me carefully. So here we go. We're now going to look first and foremost on, let's look at, we're going to look at Singapore first. I want to show you some stats. Hope you can see that clearly. So on these stats that you're looking at, you will notice, hope you can, let me know if you can see it, right in the chat box and say I can see the stats. We're not going to look at all of them. I want you to just compare a few things. At the very top of the slide, Jamaica has a GDP of $15.7 billion, okay? $15.7 billion. The GDP is the gross domestic product. This is the total amount of goods and services generated by measuring spending in the country. So Jamaica has a total goods and service product of 15.7 billion US dollars. Okay? Singapore, by comparison, has $364.2 billion. I mean, that's massive.
Wow.
Now, remember, Singapore in 1965 and Jamaica in 1965 had identical GDP. Okay? Per capita, identical GDP per capita, meaning when you take the GDP number and divide it by the number of persons in the country, when you spread that number over all the persons in the country, you get the GDP per capita. If you look down at scroll down about 5 rows, it says GDP per capita. Jamaica's GDP per capita is 5,400 US dollars per year per citizen. That's what we did per citizen for the entire economy. $5,400. It says here 5.4K. Now in Singapore, each of their citizens by comparison generates 65,000 US per person per year. That's why they have higher income. That's why they can pay themselves more money, because they generate more value, so they can pay themselves more. Jamaica generates little value compared to the number of people it has in its country, 5.4. Now I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, near the bottom. Look now at what we call intentional homicide. So Jamaica now has 57 murders, intentional homicides, 57 murders per 100, while Singapore has 0.2 murders per 100,000 persons. So remember, Singapore's per capita GDP is 65,000 per person. So they are generating $65,000 in US dollar value per person. We're generating only 5,400 per person. But we generate far more murders per 100,000 person in Singapore. We generate 57 murders per 100,000, generate 0.2 murders per 100,000. You should also look at the life expectancy. Because of the high value of their output and the quality of life, they live on 82.9 years, while we in Jamaica live on average 74.3 years. Okay, we could look at more statistics, but I just wanted us to look at those ones. There are others, but remember, their GDP is much bigger per individual than ours, but our murder is much bigger per 100,000 than theirs. Now let's compare ourselves now with Haiti. Haiti, which is far poorer than Jamaica, far poorer than Jamaica. Now let's look at Haiti. All right. So follow me now, and we're going to look at the same figures for Haiti. Okay, the same figures for Haiti. Here we go. The figures for Haiti versus Jamaica. Okay, now look, reverse. Haiti only generates $9.7 billion in GDP, while Jamaica produces more than Haiti. Not as big a jump like Jamaica compared to Singapore, but we are producing $15.7 billion in GDP compared to Haiti's $9.7 billion. So clearly, we're richer than Haiti in terms of our output. If you do the per capita GDP, Haiti's per capita, meaning the output per person in Haiti, is only 868 US dollars. They're very backwards. They're way back where Jamaica was back in the late 1960s, early 1970s. They're way back there. We're light years ahead of them by comparison. We're at 5.4 or 5,400 US dollars in GDP per person in Jamaica. We're doing far better than Haiti. They're only generating $868 per person. We're generating 5,400 per person. So we're doing great. Now let's scroll down to the homicide rates. Homicides, Haiti only has 10 murders per 100,000. We have 57 murders per 100,000.
Wow.
Haiti is far more impoverished than we, far poorer than we, and they're only having 10. Still bad. It's very bad because remember, Singapore has only 0.2 and Haiti has 10. And we are more than 5 times Haiti. Okay? In their poor, impoverished state. Now let's look at life expectancy. In Jamaica, we have much better life expectancy. We can live to 74.3 years on average, while in Haiti, 63.3 years. So they're more than 10 years less than us in life expectancy because of their poor situation, lack of hygiene and all kind of other issues. So they're poor. But their poverty has not resulted in them murdering each other at a rate even close to how we're murdering each other. So there must be something else going on here. Now, I want to take you to Ghana. Okay? And now why I'm going to take you to Ghana, Ghana has 30 million people. Jamaica has 2.9 million. The people in Ghana, for all intents and purposes, are culturally Jamaican, barring the language differences and a few other nuances. If you go to Ghana and live with them for a time like I did, you'll see that we're very much alike in so many ways, culturally, our mentality, generally speaking. Even our political system is similar to theirs in many ways, but they're bigger than us, much, much bigger in terms of size, the landmass. They're far more riches than us, gold and diamond and oil and everything. So Ghana has it made when it comes on to natural resources. So now let's go and take a look at Ghana relative to Jamaica and see what we learn from this story. Okay, here we are with Ghana. Now look, our GDP is 15.7 billion. Ghana is much better than us. Not as good as Singapore, far less than Singapore, much better than Haiti, but better than Jamaica. They're $65.6 billion in GDP. We're 15.7. GDP per capita, which means the output per person, their output per person is much lower than ours. 2,200 US dollars per person they generate in Ghana. So even though their GDP is bigger, that's mostly because of their size, not because of their productivity. Okay, so they're not very productive. It's a big country, a whole heap of people, a lot of resources, but their people are not as productive as they should be. As a matter of fact, they're less productive than Jamaica because they're only doing 2.2 or 2,200 US dollars per person, while we're doing 5,400 US dollars per person, which is way less than Singapore's 65,000 per person, which is still much better than Haiti's $868 per person. Now let's go and look at the homicide rate. In Ghana, they have 2 murders per 100,000.
Wow.
2 murders. They are poorer than us. If you look at per capita GDP, they're only outputting 2,200. We're outputting 5,400. We're richer than Ghana in terms of per person output. Yet still, with their poverty, they only have 2.1 murders per 100,000. We have 57. What is wrong? What is it that is causing us to be so bad? When you look at, so we can't say because Singapore has a different culture than we, right? We can't say because Haiti is poorer than we, they have more murders, or Ghana is poorer than we, they have more murders. So something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. And now I'm going to show you, I'm going to describe for you what is terribly wrong in Jamaica. Now let's take a look at what is terribly wrong in Jamaica. I'm going to walk you through what is terribly wrong in Jamaica. The number one problem we have in Jamaica is the kind of politics that we evolved. We are the beneficiary of a colonial system of governance where the colonial masters made sure that they divided us before they left Jamaica. And then when they were running Jamaica, Jamaica was very safe, except for what they would inflict on anybody that they want to as the masters. But outside of that, it was a very safe environment when they were here. Jamaica had about 66 murders for the entire year normally. In fact, in 1962, that's why our murder rate was very low. So when they were here running things and controlling things, they never had a democracy. They never had 2 parties. They never had an opposition. They never had any division. They had one solid government, and so they had full control and made sure the place was orderly. So back in the colonial times, Jamaica was safe. It was definitely cleaner. It was definitely more orderly, but the people themselves were not free because the wealth was controlled by the masses and access to wealth was controlled by them. That has not changed, except that we no longer have the safe, we no longer have the clean, we no longer have the orderly, but we still have the masses in charge, which are now their surrogates, the 2 parties, the leadership of the 2 parties, colluding with the private sector organization. They are the new masses, and they control the wealth, and then they leave the rest of us like dogs. Now, here's what they have done. They have taken the destructive colonial model given to them by the colonial masters, the constitution given to them by them, and they have ratcheted up in terms of intensity and made it even more cruel and destructive than any of the other countries that are using it. And here's how they did it. First and foremost, our politicians created dons, gangs, and garrisons. That is the beginning of Jamaica's undoing. The dons, like the politicians, used handouts to buy the people in their communities. The people, being poorly educated and lacking in skills and job opportunities, responded favorably and became loyal to the source of their unearned gifts of lunch money, bus fare, school fees, and other handouts by the gang leaders, which in turn run the area in which people live. So what we ended up with was the gang leaders became the law. The police wasn't the law. The people never built a relationship with the police. The police were terrorists of a different type. But the gang leaders became the law in those garrisons. But remember, they were planted there. They were cultivated there. They were curated there by the politicians first. Okay? The people even submitted themselves to the law and order of the dons, the gangs within those garrisons. And they see the police as the enemy, which they often were, in fact, an enemy of the people. So the people were caught between a rock and a hard place. The people themselves did not get up and build this infrastructure. Our political leaders calculatingly sat down and built that structure. They funded the dons, they gave them government contracts, and they curated them to ensure that they brought in the votes. Over time, the dons, the gangs, and the garrisons take on a life of their own and became a massive monster that the politicians could not control, because for them to fully control them, it would expose the politicians themselves, just like how Bruce Golden was exposed only because the Americans got involved and pushed the issue, and so all the beans were spilled. If the Americans didn't get involved, the beans would not have been spilled. We would not have known the full truth or even much more of the truth. And so we learned some. That's one of the reasons. But before I continue talking, I want to hear Mr. Roman's response to that, and then I will go to the second reason. Go ahead, Mr. Romans.
Man, you're teaching me a lot. You're teaching me a lot. And that just kind of tell us a little bit of the work that we'll need to do. And
Yes.
the UIC is really going to be the only solution to this, because one of the things that we'll have to do is undo everything that is
Yes.
already done. And
Absolutely.
it's strategy to totally undo it. And this is going to give Jamaicans everywhere, at home and in the diasporans who are here concerned about the safety, the diasporans who are here who want to bring their business back home, who want to come back there and become productive citizens. Today they had the article by the Gleaner that we are number one.
Oh, I'm gonna come to that. Don't go there yet. There's a space for that. There's a space for that.
Okay,
I just want your quick responses on these, because I have a few to go through. So I'm gonna get you to give me quick responses.
My
But
point
here's the
to
next
this-
point. Here's the next
point, my point to this is our
Yes.
responsibility to undo what has been done.
Exactly.
Okay.
So here's the next point now. Here's the next
Yes.
point. So I just told you about the dons, gangs, and garrisons. Our politicians created a culture of gun violence. This didn't happen by chance.
No.
It was the politicians on both sides that began the mass importation of illegal guns. Okay? And they set off in Jamaica a love affair with guns as a tool of gaining power, authority, and money. They taught our little boys, they taught our young men, they taught our communities, particularly the garrison ones, that the way to have power, the way to get things done, the way to get access to authority and money was through the gun. So they imported large amount of guns, and they placed these guns in the hands of our boys and gave them a sense of power. Now, when you give an ignorant man a gun, does gun make you feel powerful? Very powerful. And when you give somebody who's untrained, there's no training about the psychology of owning a gun or what you're doing or whatever. They just simply got a gun. Over time, this emerged into the gun for drugs trade. Because remember, the drug trade was being developed. They made ganja illegal, so they push it on the ground. When you make something illegal that should not be made illegal, you create all kinds of other crimes. Okay? And that's what they did. They used ganja to make criminals of our young men and boys. Okay? And so that trade developed. Now, the role of government is simple. Government has two roles, two basic roles. Number one is to protect us from external invasion, protect us from external parties who want to come in and destroy our people or destroy our lands or take over our properties. So number one role of government is border control and protecting us. So stopping the guns from coming in, stopping anything from coming in that is going to destroy our country. That was their number one goal. Number two, the role of government number two is to protect us from each other. So I don't use force or fraud to take away your life, to take away your freedom, or to take away your property. Those basic rules. Those are the two things that government must do and which our government has not done. They themselves have violated this by teaching us to kill each other and by allowing outside parties to come in and help them to help us to kill each other. And they did that especially during the 1970s and 80s, and hundreds of Jamaicans were killed, thousands of Jamaican businesses were destroyed, and thousands of families were disrupted and displaced because of these two parties pursuing an agenda that led to a culture of gun violence in Jamaica. So notice, the Dons, the garrisons, and the gun violence, our politicians planted that, bred that, cultured that, and brought us into a country that became synonymous with gun violence. Number three, they also, before I go on to number three, a quick thought on that. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Romans? Am I on the right track? Is it resonating, or is it making sense to you?
Yes, it's making a lot of sense. I was talking to one of my colleagues some time ago in Florida, and he was telling me that he remember when he was in the JDF. He was in the JDF, and he was at a bar in Spanish Town drinking, yes. And someone called and said that the politician is outside handing out guns. And when he went out there, they were there handing out guns. And he said, man, it was the most frightening thing to him to see them out there distributing guns. Politicians.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
like candy.
Like
guns
candy.
like candy.
Yeah.
And so this is the history of Jamaica. And what I want to show you, our crime rate could have been 2 per 100,000, like Ghana. Sorry, no, Singapore is 0.2.
Right.
It could be 10 like Haiti, 10 per 100,000, or it could be 2 like Ghana, but instead it's 57. Wow. And it could even be better. It could be 0.2 like Singapore, but it is 57. So hold on now. Here's the next reason. Our politicians created a poor education system deliberately. They have borrowed millions and millions of dollars in the name of building an education system, and they have stole more than half of that money over the course of the time, denying our people, denying our children a proper education. In fact, to this very day, right now, today, in 2022, our high school system fails 70% of our students. And the 30% who pass, most of them are fraudulent passes. Now, you might be shocked to hear me say that. Most of the 30% that pass are fraudulent passes. I tell you why. They have watered down the education system so that a person who now passes 13 subjects really has not passed 13 subjects. They now have a system of SBAs where 45% of your final grade is made up of your coursework, which most of the students plagiarize, copy, and do all kind of stuff and get those grades. So the 45% is not truly earned. So 45% of your pass mark is already now secured, much of it by many students fraudulently secured. Even teachers are involved in scamming to give those grades as well. Then on top of that now, the course itself, the way they grade you on your final exam, the grading is based on comparing the other students to the best student. So let's say the best student by our old-time standard is really a C student. That student will then be given an A. If the best is a C, he's given an A. And then now the other students are measured relative to him or her. And so they get a B or a C, depending on how close they come to him or her. So that A might really be a C, and the B might really be a C. Sorry, the A is a C, and the B might be a D, and the C is really a E. But all three of those students are now coming out with a piece of paper saying that they have passed a particular subject. And you can see that in the quality of our productivity as a country, because the way you measure the education system of a country is the productivity of its people. No matter about the grades, how many subjects they pass and what percentage pass maths or English, look at the productivity of the people. Look at the reasoning ability of the people. Look at the ability of the people to have conflict resolution, and then you will know how educated the nation is. And by our performance, you can see clearly that our nation is highly uneducated. Am I wrong or right?
You're so right, sir. It's a culture of extortion and a culture of biases a culture of paying off, and then it's also
Yes,
leads to the culture of not exposing the wrong, where they all believe that
exactly.
they see the wrong and it's not nothing to be said about it. So all of this is combined in that culture that is sending
So
us
here's
out.
what's happening.
Yes.
So what's happening? So we have a education system where, in the end, because of the poor quality tuition and all kind of problems, right? Distracted teachers and all of that, you have child parents. Many of our children are born to children. Okay,
Yes.
so they're being born to a mother who is in her teens, and a father who is also in his teens or older, but is not a father, will not be a part of the thing. So you have absentee mothers and absentee fathers. Some of the parents go away to look for a better life. There are farm workers. They leave their family for months at a time. Others just try to run away, run off. Others try to get a visa by any means necessary, and they go. They have barrel kids. Many parents are trying so hard to eke out a living. They're lacking the time, they lack the skills, they lack the means to care for their children. They're not properly educated enough, so they don't have proper parenting skills in the first place. Their knowledge that they've gotten from high school is really substandard. Yep. And they're lacking the time because of the hustling they have to do. They're lacking the time to be able to pay attention to their child. Serious problems. Many of those children are then physically abused while growing up. So they're being physically abused, which means they're not developing properly. Many of them are being sexually abused. You have a lot of children a lot of our girls who lost their virginity as a child through sexual abuse, through rape. Okay? And boys now too. And many of our children suffer from child labor abuse. I'm not opposed to children working, but sometimes it's quite abusive, the level of work that they have to do and what they're exposed to, and that damages them. We have removed corporal punishment from the schools, which is good, but we have done so without a viable alternative being taught to teachers and to parents. So parents and teachers are taught not to spank, which is the way we used to try to discipline, which is, I agree, we shouldn't be spanking, but we have not taught them practical, effective alternative to ensure that they pass on discipline to the children. So the teachers now, their hands are tied because they no longer can beat. And if they yell, which they shouldn't, and so on, they're being captured on video and placed on social media. So the teachers now are on guard. They're now careful. Now, and careful doesn't mean better at the job. At the same time, because the teachers are being poorly paid, they're very distracted by just trying to survive. So they're now looking for extra means to earn an income. Back in the old days, they used to use private lessons to do that. So they don't really teach fully in the class. They have private lessons so they can get you to come and pay, and that will augment their salaries. Yes, there were some teachers who did a good job as private lesson teachers, but the fact is, many were doing it to augment their income because the salary was not sufficient. So you have teachers being distracted, teachers engaging, even if they don't realize it, in a form of corruption by shortchanging the students in the classroom and moving it to a private lesson session. So only those students with parents who can pay the private lesson fees get in. We have a system that focuses them on passing subjects instead of mastering skills, mastering self, mastering human relations, mastering money, and mastering the skills to apply knowledge to solve real life problems efficiently and effectively. So in effect, our politicians have shot us in the head and in the foot by the way they have allowed our school system to mature into an enterprise of failures. Yeah. So many of our students now see they don't have the right concept. They think that being employed is a right. I have a right to be employed. They expect value without giving value. They don't understand the importance of trading value for value. That is not taught as a part of the key to success in life. They're just taught to pass some subjects, and then they should get a job, and they should get money for that job, and the money should be big enough. This creates a lot of subsequent problems when they leave school and find themselves in some serious problems. Before I go to number 4, let me know what your thought is.
My thought on that is that it seemed like the politicians are caught up in the same culture because they oversight, they overlook all the concerns that should be there. And those things are now deemed to be normal, to be the norm. So they're not even cited as issues that they should take up and do legislation on, because they don't see that.
But they can't take it up. This is what we have today. It's their system. What you have today is the JLP and PNP system, a FIDM system. So even if you hear them now start to borrow the UIC phrases and start to raise concern, if you notice, they're not short of, when they're in opposition, to tell you all that should be done. And when you elect them, they don't do it. They don't do it, or they can't do it, or they find an excuse. So the truth of the matter is, we just can't trust them. Now, the fourth thing that I want to point out, which is a major contributing factor to the problem we're talking about here, is our politicians created a brain drain problem. You were trying to refer to this earlier on. I wanted to leave it for now. Our politicians created a brain drain problem, and that too is deliberate. They do not want bright people here in Jamaica. They want the bright people to go abroad and send money back home and keep out of the business of Jamaica. You even heard current day politicians in the current government saying that the diaspora should just give donations and remittances and stay out of it. The UIC, on the other hand, wants the diaspora to be fully involved in Jamaica. We want you to be able to vote from wherever you are. We want you to be able to be appointed to ministerial offices from wherever you are, to be brought back to Jamaica to serve in the capacity of your competencies. We want you to be able to come back home duty-free and not have to pay a cent to bring back all of your belongings, your business, your house, back to this country without having to pay any duties at all, because we want you here. We need to reverse the brain drain. So the UIC is going to do everything possible to reverse that. And the best way to do that, make sure all Jamaicans, no matter where you are, you can vote in Jamaican election by absentee ballot or whatever. We won't select voting and allow you to vote from wherever you are, because we leave our in Jamaica. People
you're not coming out clearly. Yeah, you're not coming out clearly. No, you're not. Right.
You know.
You're a little better now. You're a little better now. Yes.
All right. Well, I think what? That's what. So
I think
so here's what's going on now, right? So they have stayed away, and they would like to keep away the diaspora. So the people in the diaspora are rightfully afraid of the bad economy, the crime, the low standard of living, and the bad healthcare system.
Yes, so Mr. Patterson just left until he gets back. What happened is that there's a culture of the diaspora being segregated from the Jamaican people. The UIC believes that the diaspora should come all hands on deck. Are you back, Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, I am back. But let me tell you something. I just saw many changes on my screen without me doing anything.
Wow.
So just bear that in mind. I saw a number of things happening on my side here and I didn't do anything. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So what they have done, they have scared away the best and brightest from Jamaica. There's still a few of us here, but they've scared away a lot of people, right? And they want to keep it that way. This leads to a high concentration of low-skilled and mentally challenged persons that are more easily controlled and manipulated by a few politicians and dons. That's their objective. This is like slavery all over again, where remember, during slavery, you had about 40 blacks to one white, but the white was in charge. Can you imagine that? And they want to, and because of that system of divide and conquer, they were able to maintain slavery for 350 years. Now, today, the news came out that Jamaica is ranked second in human flight and brain drain in the world, which means we are the second fastest loss of our brilliant people to other countries internationally. And we have lost, we continue to lose our best people. Now 400 of our teachers are about to leave, and they're telling us, no problem, we have more coming. So they have more newly trained teachers who they're bringing in, who don't have the experience. They will not be able to work with experienced teachers to get proper transfer of knowledge and so on. But what they're saying, don't worry about it. But this is how they have maintained a system of brain drain. We're not a country at war. We're not a communist dictatorship. Yet still, we are beating all those countries in having our people wanting to leave Jamaica. That is unacceptable, Mr. Romans. Unacceptable.
That is grossly unacceptable. And that is something that is intentional. Because what happened is that the developed world are aware that Jamaica is the largest English-speaking country in the Caribbean, island in the Caribbean. So it is like it's like a true, source of resources. So people go to Canada, they go to the United States, and they go to England whenever they are needing people. Right now, a lot of teachers are leaving the classrooms here, and they know that they need to replace them. So they're just, we have Jamaica, okay?
Oh yeah,
no, the
just
thing
grab
about
the Jamaica
is that
because they know the Jamaicans are suffering. They know we're suffering, economically. So almost every teacher right now, if they get an offer, they'll jump on the plane tomorrow.
Of course they will. And so you have all these agencies coming there and recruiting them. Now, the thing about it is, the unfortunate thing is that we, the people of Jamaica, our IQ so low that we cannot see the intention of these people.
Mr. Romans, remember, 70%.
It's unbelievable.
Remember, hear what happened. You know why it is. Why it is right now, the diaspora is the largest funder of the UIC. You know why? Most of our funding doesn't come from the local Jamaicans here giving their $1,000. Some do. Some give 1,000, some give 5, some give 10 here in Jamaica. But most of the donors are in the diaspora. You know why? Because your IQ have been, remember, most of you are the best and brightest who run away from here for good reason. You're economic refugees. And while you are there, your intellect has also gone up tremendously, because now you see, my God, Jamaica could have been better. We can have a better Jamaica. We don't have to live like this. So you want a better Jamaica. So you can see clearly, locally here, many persons have just resigned themselves to live in this mess for the rest of their lives. They don't realize they have a fighting chance, that they can actually get up and stand up and say, no, sir, I am going to get and be a part of the UIC and own this party and make this party work for me. They don't realize that yet. But you in the diaspora realize that you can do that. And that's why you are the majority funder of this party. But let me continue on though, because I want to get through a few things quickly. Our politicians also built a corruption enterprise. So they have deliberately made Jamaica a corruption enterprise. So corruption is with the politician, it is with the bureaucrats, so the public sector workers, including police, teachers, and then of course pastors, parents, children. Everybody in Jamaica has now been groomed into corruption. You see, like how Singapore groomed their people to be disciplined, we have groomed our people to be corrupt. Now, we could have chosen to groom our people to be disciplined, but our leaders chose to groom us to be corrupt, because they first embrace corruption and use corruption as the basis to build their political careers and to use that political careers to build their wealth, and in the process shape a Jamaica that you see here today. And so what do we have now? Massive theft of borrowed resources by the government. They borrow the money on our heads, because remember, when they borrow the money, they don't have to pay it back. When they borrow $1 billion US, they will never have to pay it back. We, the people, have to pay it back. So there's something called concentrated benefit and dispersed cost. So the cost is dispersed among all of us. Let me explain it this way to you. Let's say, Mr. Romans, you and I were able to borrow $1 billion US in the name of the Jamaican people. And let's say you and I told the people that we're borrowing this $1 billion to fix roads for them. And we use $500 million and potte the road, barely fix it, just put some basic covering that when rain fall, it wash off. So we use $500 million to do that. I stole $500 million. So me and you will be very, very wealthy. That's concentrated benefit. We have concentrated the the $500 million stolen. We have concentrated that between you. But over the next few years, all 3 million of us must pay back that 1 billion plus interest. So you and I will be very wealthy. Yes, you and I will have to suffer some inconveniences of the bad roads. You and I will suffer the inconveniences of reading in the news about the crime. You suffer the inconvenience of, a lot of Jamaicans looking sad and depressed and begging on the street. But after we drive through all of that, we'll drive through a big palatial gate, high walls, nice lights on the walls, security systems put up, beautiful lawn, wonderful tiled driveway, important chandelier, a nice big 50-inch television, a nice car, a chauffeur. So you and I will be able to live big amidst all of that degradation and evil. You understand? That is called concentrated benefits. So they have no problem doing what they're doing, because when they do it, they get the benefits of stealing our money and they spread the cost of paying it back across all of us. So the citizens are punished with poor or no public services to pay back the principal and the interest of what they borrow, and also have to pay for the fact that the very structure of society is degrading each and every day. On top of that, our politicians take monies and they put the money in the hands of their connected friends, right? So they put in, let me put it this way, they put money ahead of the people and the best interest. They put having money in their own bank account, having the wealth surrounding them. They put that ahead of the people's interest, while Lee Kuan Yew, who was a good leader, a great leader, put the people's interest ahead of him being wealthy. He lived a good life. He lived in the same house he had when he just went into politics. The very same house, he kept it all throughout. He never became a very ostentatious person. He lived a modest, decent, very good life. But the people could never accuse him of enriching himself at their expense. Now, so what our politicians have done, what they did during the pandemic, okay? During the pandemic, what did they do? They enforced overreaching measures. Why? To get the money from the foreign masters. They did not care about a single life in Jamaica, about to save life and to save livelihoods. All they cared about was to do whatever it takes so that the foreign masters would write that and send to them so they could get that money in their hand. So our government was willing and ready and chose to destroy small and micro enterprises, destroy the small business economy, destroy the microeconomy just to get money from the foreign masters. They derailed our education system by locking our children out of schools just to get money from the colonial master. And they have now caused a greater division in our society and a greater disregard for law and order. And they have now pushed us over the hedge. And that is why the crime level has turned up. Because they have now pushed the people too far in poverty, pushed the people too far by demonstrating a lack of care, pushed the people too far by causing people to lose confidence in government fully and in the police as well. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that, Mr. Patterson, which is a lot to you have exposed here. But back to what the UIC is for. The UIC is for removing the embargo from the diaspora and opening red carpets to allow diaspora to come in and bring their resources, bring their skills, bring their intellect, bring their businesses, bring everything to come back to Jamaica. We're gonna tilt the dish back from the brain drain, back home. We'll be launching to bring the people back and allow them to come and make Jamaica as great as it can be, which is going to be the greatest Black nation in the Caribbean. We're going to be a template for many other nations, small nations and great nations. Because what we're going to do, we're going to separate politics from the ministries, which is going to be great. No minister of government is going to be involved politically, and they are going to be accountable to the people. They're going to be well screened from all over, and they're going to be accountable to the people of Jamaica. Yeah. So that means they are going to give account, and they will be coming because they have means to solve the problems that we have, and that's what makes the UIC so sweet. Because, and I have to say sweet, because what happened is that once we separate politics from the true work for the people, then we're going to be, politicians will know that they're in their place. They need to be attending to their constituency and make sure that their constituency are well cared for. That's their responsibility, but not to get money and all those things.
I know most people may not even fully understand what you're saying there now, but that's a very powerful statement. The fact that we're separating the politicians from the administration of the people's business. So the politicians legislate, the politician oversight, but the administrative people, the ministers of government, are subject matter. But moving right along, I want to show you another point that is going to complete the cycle of what I'm talking about. Our politicians, through the process I've been describing so far, they have made the police the enemy of the people instead of its respectful servant and protector. They have caused the police not to be seen as those who are invested with the authority to use force when and where necessary to prevent anyone from violating the rights of others. So the police is seen as an instrument or tool of government rather than a defender of the people, a protector of the rights of citizens. And what they've done to the police, which is critical, like they've done with teachers, they have kept the police underpaid, overworked, and unfairly treated within their own system of career development and promotion. They don't have meritocracy in the police. You rise through the ranks based on favoritism, based on political interference, as opposed to rising through the ranks because you have performed well your duties. So the police officers you see walking around, they're actually demotivated, they're distracted, and they're enticed by corruption, which leads many of them to become a form of legalized criminal, which is sad. And I'm not saying that with any glee. I'm saying that with great reservation and great concern for what's happening in our police force. It's not a police service. Instead, it is an environment where many persons find themselves in this job as a last resort. They couldn't find work anywhere else. And so They applied to the force and they got into the force. And when they got in, when they thought this was an institution that was above reproach, that was an institution that would be respectful and protective of the Jamaican people, they find out that it's a demoralized agency of underpaid, overworked, unfairly treated, demoralized police officers who cannot get a promotion based on competencies and performance, but most of them are promoted based on some kind of favoritism. Now, on top of all this, the police officer may have only become a police because they were not able to find other employment options. They couldn't survive as an entrepreneur because of the way the system was. They couldn't get another job because there were not enough jobs and not enough options for them to pursue. And so their lives have been made very difficult. And so the police you see on the street, right, they're suffering, they're struggling. Many of them have 2 or more side jobs that they're using to supplement their income. When a police officer has to be supplementing his income the way that they are doing, it degrades them. It also stretches them. It also distracts them from their core work. And it makes them susceptible to bribes and susceptible to doing all kinds of things that are inconsistent with the oath of office that they should have taken. And so we have to realize that our police is actually not able to do its job very well. And because of that, crime is also spiraling out of control. Now, our politics also makes young people very depressed. With all of what I said before, they have now turned our young people into feeling hopeless. They don't see an honest path to a basic level of success in a reasonable time. They're going to school, they're passing exams, some of them, and they're hoping for a job, but realizing that that job will never pay them enough. They'll simply get enough money to pay for lunch, bus fare, and a very meager and marginal existence. That's not attractive. So what is attractive? Scamming in various ways seem more lucrative. Begging, stealing, or even just staying home, just doing nothing. And the longer a graduate stays home, whether from high school or college, is the more they lose the basic knowledge they would have gained. Whatever they gain, they gradually lose that over time. And so they become over time unemployable. The longer they stay in that condition, the more they become unemployable. And the more they become unemployable, the more they lack the proper work ethics that is needed. They become disconnected from reality. And too many now become unprepared for the real global economy. So basically, they're pushed backwards and they don't even know it. And so that's why you see when you look at some of the videos on television, when the police goes into these communities and you look at the condition of the community, you look at the faces of the young people, you look at their mannerism, you can see a serious defect developing because of the system they have to live in. So our politicians have created a very, very disturbing situation that will require very, very strong leadership, a mindset of steel, a leader who is truly fully committed to the restoration of our people in every way possible. If you also notice, our politicians have created defenseless citizens, meaning they have left us, and I saw somebody writing it in the comment section, the fact that those persons who are decent, moral citizens are not able to easily own and carry a firearm means that they're left defenseless against criminals who can easily access firearms and ammunition. So they've tied their hands behind their back. The government is not able to stop the criminals, and the government at the same time is stopping us from able to defend ourselves. If you apply for a firearm here, it will take you no less than 2 years unless you have a corrupt means of getting it. And you've seen it in the news, how corrupt the Firearm Licensing Association authority is. They have been giving criminals guns, licensed guns to criminals, while law-abiding citizens have to wait 2 years and may still not get it, and may not be good reason why they haven't gotten it. You have seen stories of persons who have applied for a firearm, did not get it, and were subsequently murdered by somebody in their store with a firearm. So they have left the citizens defenseless, and this has emboldened the criminals. The criminals know that the police are weak. They know that the police are demoralized. They know that the police are compromised. In fact, many criminals have police friends and they work together. You know, so while they, the criminals, have guns, ammunition, and a justice system that is not effective, decent citizens cannot easily own and carry a firearm with them. So many criminals would be dead today, deterred today, if they knew that decent citizens could have, own, and carry a firearm. Your comment, sir. I've said enough.
Yes, the thing about it is that the culture of extortion has actually just come right up to the level, and as a result of that, the criminals are so emboldened that to the point that because they are now getting guns legally, a lot of them now are leasing guns or renting guns to their cronies to perform these heinous crimes, because I understand that there's a culture now of gun rental or gun leasing. You know, people who have it release it to other people to go out and perform. So all of that just lead to a lot of options. And that's
we're in a serious problem. Yeah, we're in a serious problem. By the way, by now you should have realized, Mr. Rome, realized by now that poverty is not the problem. Did you see that?
Right, exactly. Governance is a problem.
Governance is the problem. Poverty is bad, and poverty contributes, but poverty is not the root cause of crime. A corrupt system of government is a problem. It legalized society. Haiti, Ghana, and Singapore clearly shows this. It is the high degree of unfairness in the society caused by the corruption that distributes scarce benefits and spoils to a limited few at the expense of the people in general. That is what pushes people into crime. This gradually transforms the culture into one of crime and violence. We use violence, which is force or fraud or corruption, as our way of life because our leaders taught us to do so. Violence to solve problems, and we commit crimes to get ahead and to get redress in a system that is truly unfair, unjust, and evil at its core. I know some people even say that dancehall music is the problem. It is not the problem. Dancehall music is just a symptom or a reflection of the problem, and it helps to propagate the problem via uncontrolled, disrespectful use of music in society. For example, you're driving on the bus, they can play whatever they want. What kind of society is that? Where you go on a bus, you want to travel from point A to point B, and you have to sit through horrible music. And if you raise your hand, you might get thrown off the bus or beaten up. You understand? Now, that cannot continue to obtain. We have to stop this. We have to make our society a decent society. And the only authority that can do that is government. And our government has failed us on all accounts. So what is the cure? How do we cure this problem? Well, every nation needs a measure of good governance to ensure we have a safe, a clean, and an orderly society. This is how it empowers the people to be creative and productive. If people feel safe and have good quality public services and well-maintained public infrastructure, they will be able to succeed without corruption, without violence, without crime. In fact, if you couple this with an education system that truly educates for an holistic life, not the kind of system we have now, but one that educates us to be a full person, a whole person, mind, body, and character, understanding how to build quality relationships in the home, in the society, in business. If you have that holistic education that is built on a platform of discipline and respect and understanding the laws of your country and good governance, then you will have created a high value society, a very high income society, a very high class society, just like or better than Singapore. The UIC has the answer. You go back and read our 10-point plan. You're going to see how we have a transformative process beginning with providing a 100% youth employment program. So once you're leaving high school, and you're not going to college or you're not going into a trades program, 100% of the graduates will be taken up into an apprenticeship program where they're paid to learn and made to be productive, and give them the capacity they need to become a very, very successful, upstanding citizen. They will not be available for the gangs. We're going to transform our police force into a police service that is community-based, that intertwines the police in the life of the child, the life of the community, at the social level, at the economic level, and of course at the governance level. We're going to repurpose our army, or rather help our army to find their true purpose of becoming effective border control agents to prevent the guns and ammunition from coming in, and making sure that our custom works effectively. We're going to have a school program, an Afrocentric program that makes us again truly proud of who we are and should be, bring out the best in us as a people by ensuring that we understand the three core elements of self, human relations, and how money and the economy works, and to marry that with learning our subjects interdisciplinarily so that we can apply what we learn to solve daily problems. We're going to have a work fair program where those adults who have fallen through the cracks over the years are given a second chance now to have a job somewhere in the economy. You don't just get to sit home and suffer. We will help you to relearn, retrain, and be reintegrated, just like we're going to do for the young people, a work fair program for adults. We do not believe in welfare. We do not believe in handouts. We're going to give you something to do where you add value to society and you get value in return. We're going to dedicate the GCT, the General Consumption Tax, entirely to ensuring nutrition, education, healthcare, and housing for the poor, so that you're no longer poor. If you have decent housing, healthcare, quality education, and it's not the full one we have now, but education that actually expands them and teaches you to do something productively. And if we make sure our children are properly nourished, then we're going to be able to build our human capital and have a much better Jamaica. And on top of that, get rid of all the crown lands, make those lands the property of the Jamaican people as individuals, make you individual property owners with shares in the land that's being used for organic farming and community tourism, while at the same time helping every Jamaican to own a quality and decent home in reasonable time. By doing these things and making Jamaica the organic food capital of the world, and making all of Jamaica a tourist destination that truly give the Jamaican people a safe, clean, and beautiful environment, and then sharing that with the tourists, putting the people first, not tourists, putting the people first. When we do that, then we would have done all the things necessary to reverse the crime problem we have in Jamaica and bring our crime rate down from 57 per 100,000 to the level of Haiti, to 10 per 100,000, then to the level of Ghana of 2 per 100,000, and then to the level of Singapore of 0.2 per 100,000, and then better than that still. We can do it. We must do it. We have the capacity to do it. We are Jamaica. We can accomplish anything we set our mind to, and it's time we set our minds to accomplishing good things and stop doing the bad things. What do you say, my friends?
Well said, Mr. Patterson. Well said, and well accepted, and we believe that it will be done. You know,
absolutely, absolutely. So I want to thank you, Ms. Mann, for being on. You have given us 2 hours of your time today from the diaspora. I want to thank all of our as well, not guests, but our viewers. I see a lot of you commenting online. Thank you so much. We won't be able to take all your questions tonight because of the time, but I want to say this. If you believe that you can achieve, we will do it. All you have to do is believe, and then put your belief into action. There are 3 things you need to do if you want Jamaica to be a better country. If you want Jamaica to be the safe, clean, and orderly country the UIC is talking about, if you want a Jamaica where every one of us can live, earn, and retire with dignity, in liberty. If you want Jamaica that is based on individual liberty and personal responsibility, all you have to do are three basic things. Go right now to our website, uicjamaica.com, and click on join. I want to be a member or a donor or a supporter of the UIC. That's number one. Then number two, click on volunteer. I want to volunteer to spread the word, to hold meetings, to bring people to the UIC, whatever it is. And then the third thing you need to do, which is very, very important, is to click on donate and send us $1, $10, $20, $25, $1,000, whatever it is that you can give. You must own this party by being a member, a donor, a volunteer, and being somebody that is going to focus on helping the UIC to rescue your country. If you do that, just those three things, when the time comes to vote, the UIC will be on the ballot. We will have 228 candidates across all municipal council. We will have 63 candidates across all three constituencies. And we will, at the end of the day, form government and appoint initially 13 senators, and then pass a new constitution, a real constitution, a Jamaican constitution that makes us a real republic that you can now say, yeah, my country is finally truly free and independent, and we have a government that loves and cares for the people and does so by their action, not by just words. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Until next time. Take care.
Have a good night. Okay, bye-bye.
All the best.